Hello, everyone. I am David Peña-Guzmán.
And I'm Ellie Anderson.
And we are here to do another episode on our series on aphoristic texts. Choosing today a really interesting aphorism by Epictetus that Ellie chose for us. So Ellie, tell us about the text that we're going to be talking about.
Great. Okay, so I just want to briefly note I'm using The Art of Living, which is an interpretation of Epictetus's work by Sharon LaBelle. I actually teach from this text when I teach Epictetus in classes sometimes because I find it's a really nice kind of like bedside book and it's very accessible, makes Epictetus highly relevant. And so I just want to note, I'm usually somebody who's very picky about translations and academic precision, but I actually think for engaging introductory readers in Epictetus's work, this is preferable to me than something that might hew a little bit more to like a classical literal translation. So I just want to note that. Okay, so here goes. This is from page 15. The aphorism is as follows. Don't demand or expect that events happen as you would wish them to. Accept events as they actually happen. That way, peace is possible. This is part of a series where we just kind of reflect on philosophical aphorisms. And David, start us off. Do you want me to read it one more time or you got it?
No, so don't demand or expect things to happen as you want them to be. Let them happen as they do. That way you will be peaceful.
That way peace is possible.
That way peace is possible. Great. So let's talk about the beginning. That there are often cases where we expect and in certain situations demand that the world adapt itself and bend to our will. This desire for control that often leaves us frustrated because the world is largely indifferent to our desires and our interests. And according to the Stoics, this is a main source of suffering and disturbances in human life, especially inner turmoil. That happens when the outer world doesn't match the requirements or the expectations of the inner world. So they sense that you will always be hitting your head against a wall if you expect nature to be a reflection of mind.
Okay. Yeah, and I think this aphorism is pretty standard Stoicism 101, right? Epictetus is a well-known Stoic philosopher. Interestingly, he was enslaved, but he was an educated slave. And one of the things that I think comes up in both his work and in the work of Stoics in general is this idea of sort of mentally making the most of your situation and finding peace, or the ideal that in Stoicism in the ancient Greek terminology is ataraxia.
Ataraxia, yes.
Yeah, and so I think this idea, like, and maybe we can say a little bit more about what ataraxia is.
Yeah,
Peace that is possible.
Yeah,
here.
I would translate ataraxia as tranquility of mind in particular, because one of the goals of Stoicism, as is for most ancient ethical schools of thought, is eudaimonia or happiness. But then there is a debate among the ancients about what exactly brings about eudaimonia. Is it the development of habits? Is it the silencing of desire and interest? And in this case, the Stoics seem to believe, and you really see that in this particular aphorism, that it is a shift in perspective of the subject in relation to the external world that can bring about that quietude or that quieting of the self that is experienced as ataraxia, which is their conception of eudaimonia.
Yeah. And I think, too, we see in this idea of accepting events as they actually happen, the notion that when we engage with events in terms of our wishes for them, we remove ourselves from the actual happenings of the world. It's not just that bringing desire into our experience of the world is painful for us because it causes suffering, it causes disappointment. It's also that it clouds our ability to experience events as they actually happen. At least this is how I'm reading this. in terms of accepting events as they actually happen, that acceptance also means just like perceiving them or treating them as they actually happen. So moving away from this kind of cloudiness, the turbulent waves of our desire, of our expectations, and getting to a calm sea, right? Like quieting down. So this is such a well-trodden metaphor in spiritual discussions, but this idea that when the waves stop, only then can the water reflect what is above it, right? Only then can it like reflect the actual world.
Well, and the fact that the aphorism, I'm going to pick it up here, it says, accept things as they actually happen. That way peace is possible. So it doesn't say that mere acceptation is a guarantee of happiness. So it seems like there are additional elements that then would be needed in order to attain that peace. It might be that you need to develop the right mode of conduct, the right form of life, but that as a precondition, you have to have this acceptance of let's say the inhumanity of the world or the indifference of the world, which is also a recognition of the limits of your own power and developing the capacity to know which events are under your ability to control and which ones are not. And so in that sense, judgment for a Stoic would be knowing the difference between those two. And I do think that the biographical point of him having been enslaved is really illuminating here, because he was born in modern day Turkey, was enslaved, was brought to Rome, and then he was banished. And after his banishment, that's when he goes to Greece and becomes a philosopher with his own followers. And so he had a turbulent life. And so you can understand why this way of thinking would be very appealing to somebody who does not have control for a long period of time, over the course of their lives, to their circumstances. And I do think that connection is worthwhile, is worth considering in more depth.
Okay. And I want to briefly consider the possibility that this sort of Stoic move to accept things as they actually happen doesn't need to be in contrast to expecting events. Maybe it's in contrast to demanding that events happen the way that you wish them to. But remember, it's don't demand or expect. And I actually think that accepting events as they actually happen can involve expecting that events will happen the way you wish them to, because you can treat your own expectation that an event will happen the way you wish it to as part of what's actually happening.
I see. So then is it that you would also come to see your own expectations as things that change and that maybe are not always fixed?
Exactly. Okay. So this is something that for me is really important in mindfulness and meditation practices. This idea that I'm not really going to get very far if I will myself not to have expectations or desires, but I will get somewhere if I can distance myself and recognize I'm expecting right now or I'm desiring right now. And so I think I would maybe take issue with the framing that Epictetus offers in terms of demanding or expecting that events will happen as you want them to on the one hand, and on the other accepting events as they actually happen, because I would want to say that the expectation is itself an event.
Okay, I see. And so accept the fact that you will accept the fact that you will expect things, and also accept the fact that those expectations will not be met. Yeah, although I wonder whether that whether from Epictetus' position that might still lead to disappointment if you do build up those expectations, and whether in the moment of having a particular expectation you can ever really distance yourself from it enough to say, well, I just know that this is something that I do as a matter of fact, because I am the kind of being that I am. Because when you're in the moment of expecting, you are forming an attachment, you're forming a desire that directs your attention to the thing that is expected. And so I wonder whether you can have the expectation and the distance from it at the same time.
Okay. This is not a direct response to that, but just maybe something that might shift the understanding a little bit, is that what I would say is that probably if you accept that you have expectations, that will defang the expectation. And ultimately, if you keep practicing that, you will be likely to have fewer expectations about events in the future. So the effect might be the same as what Epictetus is suggesting. I think I would just want to say that the procedure, and he's not necessarily advocating for a particular procedure here, so it's not in opposition with him per se, but the procedure for arriving at that minimization of expectations and the maximization of accepting things as they happen is contingent upon first accepting that expectations are there rather than rejecting them, because rejecting the expectation is actually a form of desiring, right?
Yes. Yeah, I desire to be this
to be free of this expectation.
To be free of this deeply human fact.
Yeah.
So we'll leave you with this thought about how to bring about the possibility of peace, ataraxia, according to the Stoics.
Shall I close this out?
Yeah, and we encourage you to click like on our video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We also have a Patreon community that you can join on patreon.com if you want to join us for conversations on Zoom monthly and other fun bonus content. We really appreciate you watching this video, and we hope that if you haven't read Epictetus already, you'll check him out.